Hey dude, how are you liking Midnight so far? Midnight? More like midnight. No! What up, gamers? I'm Aaron. Midnight has just been announced for just 3 short months away, and if you've paid any attention to the beta, you might be under the impression that everything is on fire. Don't get me wrong, a lot of it is, but don't start dooming just yet. Let's take a look at where we're actually at with a lot of these changes, and talk about how we might steer them to a smooth landing come March. There's currently about 3 main areas of concern on the beta. The first one, obviously, is the class prune. How is my class looking now that it's lost everything I've ever loved? Secondly, the add-on removal. How am I supposed to play this game without the add-on that tells me when to wipe my ass? And third, the content design. If the content's not good, then what are we even doing here? So let's dive into the meat of the beta. You can see by all these bozos surrounding the training dummy through all hours of the night that everybody just wants to see how their class plays after the prune. If you asked me 6 months ago, hey Aaron, does the game need to be pruned? I probably would have said no. But then I did one dungeon as a restoration shaman and was instantly radicalized. I think if we could get back to a Shadowlands level, where classes are deep but lose a lot of the filler and bloat, that would be perfect. So how did this one do? Well, I actually made a giga-brain play by procrastinating talking about it for so long that there was an entirely new beta build. So now we don't just get to look at how the prune landed, we can see where it's headed. So if you ask me what I think of this prune, I'd say they definitely pruned it, but I'm not sure that their heart was in it. It's a lot like jacking off because you're bored, in the sense that there's just no soul in it. What the hell am I talking about? Well, basically every spec has been reduced to about 5 to 6 damage buttons that you're going to be pressing regularly. You can see in the spellbook, things have been pruned pretty tightly, but pretty much everything at this point in the beta falls apart once you open the talent trees. See, it's pretty obvious from the talents that while the developers did prune the buttons, they didn't really want to part with a lot of the cool shit that they've thought of over the last 5 years. Basically, any cool tier set, talent, or spell that you have had since Dragonflight is now crammed into this talent tree, but it has to work with the only 4 or 5 damage spells that you have left. This leads to a lot of awkwardness. You've got spells that turn into other spells, you've got talents that barely make sense with the new rotation, there's all kinds of weird shit. The most egregious example I've seen has been Beast Mastery Hunter, where they end up with like 15 different effects triggering off of just Bestial Wrath, and it turns into a different spell while it's active. And I think the biggest issue with your cooldowns triggering so many things is that the Ability Prune was kind of our only off-ramp for this crazy world we live in where our cooldowns are 90% of everything we do, and then we just kind of sit around waiting for them to come back. Now that our cooldowns trigger so many things, and so many specs just press 2 or 3 buttons outside of them, it's pretty likely we'll be experiencing a lot more of that in Midnight. And speaking of experiencing Midnight, it's important for me to now disclose that I play Mage. I've tried to keep my personal opinion on the prune as far away from my videos as possible, and the primary reason for that is that nobody wants to listen to a caster player cry any more than they have to. But I would be doing a disservice to myself and others if I did not mention that my class, as well as many of the specs that I played through the War Within, are less thoughtful, less engaging, and a lot of the time, less fun in Midnight. And you might think this is just because of the prune, but it's not. It is because of the removal of pretty much any mechanic that requires more mental input than simply which button do I press. A big example I noticed recently was when I tried Spellslinger on the beta, and learned that they had reduced the splinters into something that you could practically pretend doesn't exist. I think Fire Mage has been the go-to example for over-pruning, not because of the fact that it lost too many buttons, but because of the whiplash of going from a spec that could look forward to reducing its downtime and increasing its tempo as it became more powerful, into something that will be spamming Fireball today, next patch, and the patch after that. And I'm not trying to doom. There's a very real chance that your spec feels better and is more fun to play. But for some people, it's very likely that your class will lose a lot of the thoughtful mechanics that you enjoy improving at. But hey, even in a worst case scenario, if this prune totally sucks, the last one did too, and following that, we got Legion. So when you think about it, a bad prune is a lot like a forest fire, in the sense that it makes room for something beautiful to grow. And remember that the point of my last video was that even if they decimate your class, it's important to adapt so you can continue to succeed. So that being said, whatever rotation you have left, I'm sure that they will continue to try to at least work the jank out of it before release. So let's talk about what does need a ton of work, and that's going to be the talent trees. Because remember, we're trying to cram like 5 years of game design into the ruins of your spec tree. And in trying to do that, we've basically reverted a ton of these talent trees into their initial Dragonflight shitty version. Remember that over the last couple years, we've pretty much had to redo most of the spec trees 1 or 2 at a time and get them from where they started into the playable versions we have now. So what kind of problems have reemerged? Well, firstly, you've got a ton of 2-point tax nodes reappearing. I want to believe they understand that this is a problem, because some things like Fire Mage have had a couple of these removed, but they are pretty generally just thrown across most of the classes, and 2-point talents aren't necessarily always a problem, but when you have a 2-point talent that you would never consider taking a point out of, then it really feels silly to have your points taxed in that way. The same things arise from the Apex talents. I mean, you want to like these, and a lot of specs love them, but it feels bad putting 2 points into one of them when you can look right over at your class tree and see so many cool things that you could make if you had just 1 extra point. And one last thing about the talent trees before I shut up about the prune, the layout of the trees is incredibly shit for some classes. Take a look at my Arms Warrior here. This, again, was a huge problem at the start of Dragonflight, but you have one half of this tree that's every single target talent you could ever imagine, and the other half is every AoE talent you could ever want. They are completely separate, which means it's very unlikely that this class will be competitive at both. And this was like the primary lesson of Nerubar Palace, that classes that can do both are just inherently more valuable and more likely to be useful. You can argue that it's okay to have specialists, and to some extent I agree, but with how classes are more balanced these days, it's unlikely that something will be so good at one of the two that it justifies being useless in the other one. But anyway, enough about the prune, let's talk add-on removal. You might have seen my shitty UI throughout this video and said, wow, that looks fucking awful. Am I really gonna have to play like this for the next 2 years? And luckily, no, you will not. Add-ons still exist, but they really only provide access to things that the game gives you itself. So if all you care about is having a pretty UI, don't worry. That's gonna be no problem, as you can just get an add-on that makes a skin you like. But in terms of practicality, I gotta be honest with you, it's not great. There are 3 serious losses in the add-on department. That's going to be Plater for your nameplates, Details for your damage meter, and whatever you're using for your unit frames or your team's health bars. Every single one of these Blizzard improvements, I hate to say it, is just objectively worse. In terms of the damage meter, going from your kick-ass Details to the Blizzard damage meter is pretty much the equivalent of going from a king-sized memory foam mattress to a pile of sticks and leaves under a rock in a rainstorm. But we've got Warcraft logs, so we'll live with it, right? The place where you're mainly going to want to be gouging your eyes out is with the Blizzard nameplates. I think it's a safe bet that the Blizzard nameplates are one of my most complained about topics, but I'm going to do it again. Are they better than they were in the last expansion? Absolutely, but the bar for that is so damn low. These nameplates are better in the way that it's better to have your balls stomped on than it is to have them smashed with a hammer. You've probably seen some videos of the stacking nameplate nightmares from early beta. Is it better now? Yes, but it's not great. Managing your understanding of packs has never been more difficult, and really more than difficult, it's just frustrating. It's also difficult to see who's getting fucked up by casts, and it's especially difficult to proactively do anything about it if you're in a poll where there's lots of casts going off. And with all the nameplates either clumped up or flying across your screen, it's really difficult to stay on top of everything the pack is actually doing. The nameplates and the cooldown manager both also have kind of the same problem, which is that they give you very little options to tell Blizzard what you can handle thinking about, at least by default. Pretty much everything, you know, enemy nameplates, friendly unit frames, even your own damn buffs now that weak auras are gone. You know, Blizzard just kind of tries to hide shit from you that they think you don't need to track. For example, if I'm playing Fire Mage and I want to see my ignite timer on my secondary targets, well then too bad. The default behavior of almost every Midnight interface is to hide as much information as possible, until you come out so sheltered that you're practically a homeschooled child. And maybe for some people that's fucking awesome. But when you don't like it and you can't do anything about it, it feels incredibly silly. I want to see my ignite on the secondary targets, but I don't have a way to tell Blizzard that. And nameplates all being the same color also means that you're going to have a lot more frustrating of a time picking the one important target out of the 10,000 shitty ones. You'll see this a lot in places like the tree boss in algeth'ar, where we need to pick out the branch ad. I've seen a lot of people saying, you know, now the playing field is equal now that your overpowered cheating add-ons can't point out the right mob to you. And I think that's incredibly silly. I don't think it's fair to punish everyone because you were too lazy to download Plater. I don't think Blizzard absolutely has to let us recolor nameplates, but I do think that they might want to at least consider doing it themselves in situations where you have mobs that need to stand out. It would be a lot more fun for everyone if they can just kind of tell more clearly what they should be paying attention to. And speaking of fun, I've actually got a fun fact for you right now. Did you know that my dumbass has never uploaded more than 4 videos in 1 month? So this month, I am officially titling RAZZUNCEMBER. The title's still a work in progress. Throughout RAZZUNCEMBER, I will be giving my 850 plus beautiful friends 5 new videos at least, including a lovely Christmas special. So this year, feel free to consider joining the only nice list that matters, the Razzun subscriber list. Anyway, after that little self-promotion, I think now is a good time to get into talking about the actual content design of the Midnight Beta. This is pretty much the make or break of the expansion. The content needs to be good, and it needs to make sense with the game we're playing in 2026. So, let's get right to it. Is it good? Well, I can honestly say, after all of my M+ beta testing, I can confidently say, yeah, it's pretty good. I can't lie, the dungeon design on the PTR is pretty fucking solid. Is there some jank? Yes, absolutely there is, but you can peer through that and you can see that there actually is a really fun core game design here. There was a quasi video you might have seen the other week that might have concerned you a bit, but I want to dispel those fears for 2 reasons. The first one is because before that upload was even cold, Blizzard had already kind of surgically precision-striked some of the most egregious mobs from the dungeons. And secondly, a lot of very valid criticisms of the beta content is actually more symptoms of our reduced information than it is a, serious problem with the content. Because when you get right down to it, that's about 90% of the difficulty you would experience if Midnight launched right now. The information you have on these dungeons is fucking awful, and I'm not just talking the dungeon journal. I'm saying that casts are harder to be aware of, which again is part of the nameplates, but coordinating kicks, difficult to impossible in a pug scenario, and every single player has got the worst UI known to mankind, so nobody is playing at peak performance on the beta. Don't get me wrong, there are some serious what the fuck moments, but for the most part, knowing what the packs do and some reps on the dungeons will make these way more manageable for the average player. You're just going to have a much harder time dealing with it at first because of the fact that you're going to have a hard time telling what the mobs are doing, and you also can't tell what the fuck any of your teammates are doing either. Just like in the War Within, everything recasts, so interrupts are king. You are punished quite hard for double kicking or missing an interrupt, mostly in terms of, getting the group together. But once it's stacked up, every cast being 2.5 seconds and long cooldowns on important casts means that actually managing the pack once it's gathered is way less stressful and way easier, especially if you've got everyone in voice. You should have much less problems. But you might still need a lot of reps on the dungeons, because you can't really have one person solo calling all of the CC as easily now that they can't see their friends' cooldowns. As for the boss design on the beta, I will say I did have a couple concerns. Mainly with some of the bosses in the old returning dungeons, I was worried that they might be a little bit too boring. For example, the first boss of Pit of Saron and the second boss of Skyreach both seem like they are not going to be fun for 4 whole minutes. But outside of those 2 examples, pretty much every boss that I've played has been incredibly engaging and thoughtful. I did Magister's Terrace yesterday, and I was very pleased with actually every single boss in that dungeon. I do also worry though about any boss that can start threatening one-shots on you. Now that you can't track your teammates' cooldowns, organizing group cooldowns is way harder, especially if you aren't playing with the same people you always play with. I see this issue downplayed a lot on social media because I see arguments like, you can just talk to your teammates, but I don't really see how that's more fun gameplay. It's a lot more fun for everyone on my team if I can just say, drop AMZ now, rather than having to say, is AMZ up yet? No? Okay, what about Rally? Of course it works, it's just a lot less fun for everyone. Anyway, okay, I've ranted for a while. Let's get right to it. How is the beta? Well, the beta is pretty fucking good. I am very happy with almost all of the Midnight content I've done. But, and there is a big but here, the classes still need a lot of work. Some of them, like Fire Mage, still unfortunately after the newest build, do not feel ready for a 2026 World of Warcraft. And the UI it's trash. I think the main priority there should be the nameplates. You can work around your class being a little janky in terms of showing you what you need to see, and you can just log for the damage meters. But we need to be able to see what the hell is going on around us, and the main way we do that is through nameplates. So I'm hopeful that with some big focus on that, they should be good 3 months from now. So all that being said, I'm very excited for Midnight, and I hope you are too. But until it comes out, well, I hope you'll join me for RAZZUNCEMBER. I'm Aaron, and thanks so much for your time. Peace. Jacking off because you're bored.